The desert had swallowed everything: hope, radio signals, and the last coordinates of Marine Corporal David Chen's position. 3 days behind enemy lines. No extraction, no air support. Just sand, silence, and the certainty that death was patient. He'd stopped moving 12 hours ago, conserving what little strength remained in his shredded leg. The shrapnel had done its work efficiently, severing muscle and nerve with the indifference of steel meeting flesh. His rifle lay beside him, empty. His water bottle had been dry since yesterday. In his notebook, pressed against his chest, he'd written the only words that mattered anymore. "Tell my son I tried to come home." The sun was setting when he heard it, a sound so distant it might have been imagination, might have been the desert playing tricks on a dying mind. But then it grew louder, deeper, a mechanical growl that shook the air itself. Chen lifted his head, squinting through the orange haze of dust and fading light. There, maybe 1,000 feet up, trailing smoke like a dying comet, was an A-10 Thunderbolt II. The twin engines were sputtering, one clearly damaged, belching black smoke that spiraled into the sky. The aircraft's titanium bathtub, the armored cockpit that made A-10 pilots nearly invincible, gleamed dully in the dying light. But this bird wasn't invincible anymore. It was bleeding altitude, losing the fight against gravity. Chen watched transfixed as the aircraft began a wide, wobbling turn. It shouldn't have been flying. Every instinct told him that jet should have been spinning into the desert floor, a fireball waiting to happen. But whoever was flying it had other plans. The nose came around, steady despite the smoke, despite the obvious damage to the tail section. Then Chen saw it, the landing gear deploying. Not here, not in this god-forsaken stretch of nothing. But the pilot was committed. The A-10 dropped lower, engines screaming in protest, and Chen realized with sudden crystalline clarity that this wasn't a crash. This was a landing. An impossible, suicidal, absolutely insane landing. The wheels touched sand at nearly 200 knots, the impact sending up twin plumes of dust that turned the sunset blood red. The aircraft bounced once, twice, then settled, engines winding down with a mechanical wheeze that sounded almost human. Chen stared, his notebook forgotten, as the canopy popped open with a hydraulic hiss. Smoke poured out, thick and acrid. For a moment, nothing moved. Then a figure emerged, clumsy in full flight gear, dropping to the sand with a grunt that carried across the quiet desert. The pilot pulled off her helmet, and long dark hair spilled free. Chen's radio crackled to life for the first time in 3 days. "Groundhog 3-1, this is Reaper 2-6. I've got your position. We're walking out together." The voice was steady, matter of fact, as if landing a burning jet in hostile territory was just another Tuesday. Chen tried to speak, managed only a rasp. The pilot, Reaper 2-6, slung a rifle from inside the cockpit and started moving toward him with practiced efficiency. She wasn't running. Running got you killed in territory like this. She moved like water, low and smooth, scanning sectors as she closed the distance. 50 meters. 40. Chen could see her face now, streaked with sweat and soot, eyes sharp behind the grime. She dropped beside him, already pulling medical supplies from her survival vest. "How bad?" she asked, hands moving to his leg with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. "Bad enough," Chen managed. That landing." "Landing's the easy part," she said, applying a tourniquet with swift, efficient movements. "Getting us both out is going to be interesting." She keyed her radio. Any station, Reaper 2-6, emergency beacon active. One wounded Marine, position compromised, will attempt exfil on foot." Static answered. She tried again. Nothing. The radio frequencies were still jammed, still dead. She looked at Chen, and for just a moment he saw something flicker across her face. Not fear, but calculation. Math being done at high speed. "Reaper 2-6, Chen said. That's a close air support call sign." "Captain Elena Vasquez," she said, cinching the tourniquet tight. Chen gasped. "And yeah, close air support. Been flying the Hog for 6 years. Today was supposed to be a milk run, armed reconnaissance, nothing fancy." She gestured back at the smoking A-10. Then I took a Sam up the tailpipe and things got complicated. Why'd you land? Chen asked. You could have ejected, could've. Could have left you here, Vasquez finished. She met his eyes, and there was something ancient in that gaze, something that predated rank and protocol. My bird picked up your beacon 3 days ago. Command said you were too deep, too hot to extract, called you KIA and moved on. She checked his pulse, nodded to herself. But I kept monitoring, kept checking, and when I got hit when I was looking for somewhere to put this pig down. She shrugged. Seemed like the universe was giving me an option. Chen stared at her. You crashed a $30 million aircraft to pick up one Marine. I landed a $30 million aircraft, Vasquez corrected. There's a difference, and you're not one Marine, you're Groundhog 3-1. You've got a son waiting, I read your beacon metadata. She pulled him up, getting his arm around her shoulders. So here's how this works. We move at night, hide during the day. 40 clicks to the border. I've got water for 3 days, protein bars for 5. My sidearm, your knife, and a whole lot of attitude. Questions? Just one, Chen said. Your call sign Reaper, why Reaper? Vasquez's smile was thin, sharp as broken glass. Because everything I touch dies, except today. Today we're changing the pattern. They started walking as the last light bled from the sky. The desert at night was a different creature than the desert by day. The punishing heat gave way to a cold that seeped through flight suits and combat uniforms alike, settling into bones and joints with malicious patience. Vasquez moved them north, using the stars for navigation, her internal compass calibrated by thousands of hours in the air, learning to read the sky like a map. Chen limped beside her, his weight heavy on her shoulder, but he didn't complain. Marines didn't complain. They just bled quietly and kept moving. Every hour, Vasquez would stop, lower Chen to the ground, and scan their surroundings with methodical precision. She'd learned this from her father, a Marine himself, years before she'd ever climbed into a cockpit. The desert remembers, he'd told her. Every footprint, every sound. If you're not careful, it'll remember you right into a grave. So she was careful. She studied the sand for patterns, listened for the sound of engines or voices carried on the wind. Nothing yet, but nothing didn't mean safe. It just meant not yet caught. Your bird, Chen said during one of their rest stops. Think command knows you're down. They know, Vasquez said, checking her GPS. The screen was dark, jammed like everything else. She powered it down to save battery. But they don't know I landed. Far as they're concerned, Reaper 26 went down in a fireball. Tragic loss, memorial service pending. She took a long drink from her canteen, then passed it to Chen. Drink. Small sips. He drank, handed it back. So we're ghosts. Ghosts with a deadline, Vasquez agreed. 40 clicks in 3 days, maybe 4 if we push it. After that, she didn't finish. Didn't need to. They both understood the math. Water ran out. Strength failed, the desert won. Tell me about your son, Vasquez said as they started moving again. Conversation helped. Kept the mind focused on something other than pain and distance. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost lost in the sound of their footsteps. Marcus, 7 years old, smart as hell, loves dinosaurs and baseball. His mom, she didn't make it, cancer 2 years ago, so it's just us, just me and him. He paused, breathing hard. I joined up after she died, needed the structure, needed the purpose. Marcus understood. Kid's got an old soul. He's waiting for you, Vasquez said. It wasn't a question. He's waiting, Chen confirmed. Wrote him letters, lots of letters, but that last one. He touched his chest where the notebook rested. That one was different, that one was goodbye. We're rewriting that letter, Vasquez said firmly. New ending. Hero dad comes home, gets to read his kid bedtime stories and teach him how to throw a curveball. How's that sound? Chen's laugh was rough but real. Sounds like a fairy tale. Then we'll make it a true one, Vasquez said. They walked in silence after that, the desert stretching endlessly ahead. By the time false dawn painted the eastern sky pale gray, they'd covered maybe 8 clicks. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But it was progress, and progress was all they had. Vasquez found a cluster of rocks, a shallow depression that would shield them from sight and settled Chen into the meager shade. She positioned herself at the edge, rifle ready, and watched the desert wake. The sun rose like a judgment, harsh and absolute. Within an hour, the temperature climbed past 100 degrees. Vasquez closed her eyes, conserving energy, but her mind stayed active. She ran through scenarios, calculated probabilities, planned routes. This was what she did best: take impossible situations and find the single thread that led to survival. In the cockpit, it was angles of attack and weapon solutions. On the ground, it was water ratios and terrain features. Same skill set, different application. Vasquez, Chen said quietly, "Why'd you really land truth?" She opened her eyes, looked at him. His face was gray with pain and exhaustion, but his gaze was sharp. He deserved the truth. "Because I was tired," she said finally. "Tired of dropping bombs and flying away. Tired of protecting Marines from 30,000 feet while they did the bleeding. Tired of being—" She searched for the word. "Disconnected. I wanted to matter in a way that felt real, tangible, and your beacon." It felt like an answer. "To what question?" Chen asked. "Whether any of this means anything," Vasquez said. "Whether I'm just a trigger puller in a jet or whether I'm something more, something worth the uniform." She checked her watch. "Get some sleep. We move again at sunset." Chen closed his eyes, but before sleep took him, he said, "You're already something more. You proved that the second you pointed that broken bird at the ground." Vasquez didn't answer. She just watched the desert shimmer in the heat and thought about sons waiting for fathers and pilots learning to be human again. Night 2 was harder. Chen's leg had swollen badly despite the tourniquet, and infection was beginning its slow, patient work. Vasquez could smell it, that sweet, rotten scent that meant tissue was dying. She'd given him antibiotics from her survival kit, but it wasn't enough. He needed a hospital, needed surgery, needed things the desert couldn't provide. But complaining about what you didn't have was a waste of breath, so they focused on what they did. Each other, the stars, and the stubborn refusal to stop moving. "Talk to me about flying," Chen said as they walked. His words were slightly slurred now, fever beginning its subtle theft of clarity. "What's it like?" Vasquez adjusted her grip on him, taking more of his weight. "It's freedom and prison at the same time," she said. "In the cockpit, you're alone with yourself and the machine. Everything else falls away, all the noise, all the politics, all the bullshit. It's just you and the physics. The A-10, she's not elegant like the fast movers. She's blunt force, ugly but effective. Titanium bathtub and a 30mm Gatling gun that sounds like God ripping canvas. When you pull the trigger, the whole airframe shudders. You feel it in your bones." "Sounds intense," Chen managed. "Honest," Vasquez said. "The jet doesn't lie to you, doesn't pretend to be something it's not. You put bad input in, you get bad results out. Cause and effect, pure and clean." She paused, scanning ahead. The terrain was changing, becoming rockier. Good for cover, bad for Chen's mobility. But the best part, the absolute best part, is knowing that somewhere down there, some kid like you is in trouble and you're the cavalry. You're the angel on their shoulder saying, "Not today." That's why I fly. "And now you're the cavalry on foot," Chen said. "How's that working out?" "Ask me when we cross the border," Vasquez replied. But she was smiling just a little. They covered another 6 clicks before Chen collapsed. Vasquez caught him, eased him down, and immediately checked his pulse. Too fast, too weak. The fever was spiking, burning through him like wildfire. She pulled out her med kit, administered more antibiotics, and forced water down his throat. He coughed, sputtered, but got it down. His eyes were unfocused, looking at things that weren't there. "Marcus," he mumbled. "Tell Marcus about the dinosaurs, the big ones, the ones that ruled the world." "You'll tell him yourself," Vasquez said firmly. She keyed her radio again, knowing it was futile but trying anyway. Any station, Reaper 2-6, medical emergency, request immediate extraction." Static hissed back at her, mocking. She tried different frequencies, different protocols. Nothing. They were alone, and Chen was dying. Vasquez looked at the sky, clear, infinite, indifferent. Somewhere up there, satellites were passing overhead, watching everything with electronic eyes. Somewhere, command centers hummed with activity, officers pushing digital markers across digital maps. Somewhere, the war machine continued its mechanical dance. But here, in this specific patch of nothing, it was just a pilot and a marine and the mathematics of survival. She made a decision. They'd rest here for 4 hours, longer than safe, but Chen needed it. Then they'd push through the next night regardless of his condition, carry him if necessary, drag him if it came to that. The border was 26 clicks away. Might as well have been on the moon, but Vasquez had learned long ago that impossible was just another word for difficult, and she'd built a career on difficult. She positioned herself where she could watch both Chen and their approach vector, rifle across her knees, and waited for the sun to set again. In the silence, she thought about the moment she decided to land instead of eject. It had been instinct more than calculation, a deep, wordless certainty that this was her crossroads, her defining moment. Everything before had been preparation. Everything after would be consequence. And if the consequence was dying in the desert next to a marine she'd never met before yesterday, then at least it would mean something. At least she'd have chosen it. Chen stirred, opened his eyes. For a moment they were clear, lucid. "Hey," he said, "your call sign, Reaper. You never told me the real story." Vasquez was quiet, weighing what to share. Then, "My first combat mission, I was 24, fresh out of training, arrogant as hell. I got tasked to provide close air support for a convoy that got ambushed. By the time I arrived, it was chaos. Friendlies scattered, enemies everywhere, everything on fire. My wingman wanted to wait for confirmation, wanted to be sure of the targets. But I saw Marines dying and I made the call. Dropped my full loadout on a building complex where the fire was coming from." She paused. "Turns out there were civilians inside, 14 of them, women, children. The enemy had forced them there as shields." Chen said nothing, just listened. "Command cleared me," Vasquez continued. "Rules of engagement, fog of war, all the standard explanations, but I knew. I'd killed 14 people who were just trying to survive, so I took the call sign Reaper. Reminder that every decision has weight, every trigger pull has a cost. Some of my squadron thought it was badass, this tough girl attitude. They didn't understand. It wasn't about being tough. It was about remembering." "You saved that convoy," Chen said quietly. "You saved Marines." "I did," Vasquez agreed. "But I killed those civilians. Both things are true. I've learned to live with that. Learned that sometimes there are no good choices, only less bad ones. And I've spent 6 years trying to make sure that when I do pull the trigger, it's for the right reasons. Every life I save, I consider it a payment on a debt I'll never finish clearing." She looked at him. "That's why I landed. Why I'm here. You're alive because 14 people died. Maybe that doesn't balance the scales, but it's the best I can do." Chen reached out, gripped her arm with surprising strength. "It balances," he said. "It balances." They didn't speak after that. Words weren't necessary. They understood each other in the way people do when death is close and pretense becomes too expensive to maintain. They were just two people trying to matter in a universe that mostly didn't care, and that was enough. When darkness came again, Vasquez hauled Chen to his feet and they resumed their march. 26 clicks to go. The distance felt infinite, but infinity could be crossed one step at a time. So they took the steps, one after another, north toward safety, toward home, toward whatever ending the desert had written for them. The third day broke with a sound that didn't belong, the distant whine of engines, mechanical and purposeful. Vasquez froze, pulling Chen down behind an outcropping of rock. She strained to identify the source. Not American. The pitch was wrong, the rhythm different. She thought, Russian, maybe Chinese, didn't matter which. What mattered was they were searching and they were getting closer. The sound grew louder, resolving into the distinctive chop of rotor blades. A helicopter, flying a search pattern, sweeping across the desert in methodical grids. Vasquez pressed herself flat against the rock, pulling Chen down beside her. His breathing was ragged, each inhale a labor, too loud. She put her hand over his mouth, gentle but firm, and he understood. He stilled, fighting to quiet the desperate gasps. The helicopter passed overhead, maybe 200 feet up. Vasquez could see it through a gap in the rocks, and Me-8, older model but still deadly. Door gunners scanning the ground with practiced eyes. She held her breath, every muscle locked, willing invisibility. The helicopter continued its sweep, moving east, then circling back. They were thorough, whoever was flying. They weren't just looking, they were hunting. For 10 minutes that felt like hours, the helicopter worked the area. Then, finally, it moved on, the sound of its engines fading into the distance. Vasquez waited another 10 minutes, making sure it was truly gone, before allowing herself to breathe normally. Chen was shaking, fever or fear or both. "Close," he whispered. "Too close," Vasquez agreed. She checked their position, did the math. 15 clicks to the border, but the search pattern meant something had changed. Either they'd found her A-10 or they'd picked up something on sensors. Either way, the net was tightening. They needed to move faster, but Chen was barely mobile. The equation had become impossible. Vasquez made another decision, the kind that felt like stepping off a cliff. She keyed her radio, knowing the enemy would triangulate the signal, but gambling that friendly forces would hear it first. Broken arrow, broken arrow, broken arrow. Reaper 2-6, 15 clicks south of the border. One wounded, hostile search parties active. If anyone's listening, we're out of time. Static answered. She repeated the call, changing frequencies. Still nothing. The jamming was total, professional. Whoever was running this operation knew what they were doing. Vasquez powered down the radio before it could fully betray their position. They'd bought maybe 30 minutes before the helicopter returned with reinforcements. 30 minutes to cover ground that should take 3 hours. Impossible mathematics. "Leave me," Chen said. His voice was weak but clear. "You can make it alone. Without me slowing you down, you'll—" "Stop talking," Vasquez said, not unkindly. "We already had this conversation and I already rejected that option. We walk together or we don't walk at all. Those are the choices." "Vasquez." "Captain Vasquez," she corrected. "And I gave you an order, Marine. Stop talking and start moving." Something in her tone reached him, some resonance of command that bypassed logic and hit pure instinct. He nodded, and together they pulled him upright. He was dead weight now, barely able to support himself. Vasquez got under his shoulder and started walking, each step an act of will. 15 clicks. Might as well have been 1,500. But she'd been taught by the best, her father, the Marines who'd raised her, the A-10 that had forgiven countless mistakes, and the lesson was always the same. You don't quit. You don't ever quit. You move until you can't move, and then you move some more. They covered maybe 2 clicks before Chen collapsed again, this time unconscious. Vasquez lowered him carefully, checked his vitals. Pulse thready, breathing shallow. The infection had won. Without proper medical intervention, he had hours at most. She looked at the border, invisible in the heat shimmer but tantalizingly close. 13 clicks. She could carry him, but not at any useful speed. She could hide him and go for help, but leaving him meant returning to a corpse. The sound of engines returned, multiple sources now. The search had intensified. They'd found something. Her radio signal, thermal signatures, footprints in the sand. Didn't matter what. What mattered was the net closing, time running out, and choices narrowing to none. Vasquez knelt beside Chen, checked his notebook tucked into his vest. The letter to his son was there, creased and sweat-stained but intact. She read it quickly. "Tell Marcus I tried to come home. Tell him his dad loved dinosaurs too, especially the big ones. Tell him to be brave and strong and kind. Tell him I'm sorry." Simple words, but they hit harder than any ordnance she'd ever dropped. This was what mattered, not strategy, not tactics, not the grand sweep of geopolitics. Just a father who wanted to tell his son he'd tried. She pulled out her own notebook, the one pilots kept for flight logs and quick notes, and started writing. "Marcus, your dad's letter was wrong. He made it home. We both did. The Marine Corps doesn't leave people behind, and neither do A-10 pilots. Your father is the bravest man I've ever met, and when you're old enough to understand what that means, I hope it makes you proud. He spoke about you the whole way. about dinosaurs and baseball and being a good man. He taught me what courage looks like. Signed, Captain Alina Vasquez, USMC, Reaper 26. She tucked the note with Chen's letter, sealed them both in a waterproof pouch. Then she picked up her rifle, checked the magazine, and prepared to sell their lives as expensively as possible. The helicopter appeared first, cresting a ridge to the east. Then two trucks, older Soviet models, bristling with armed men. They'd found the trail and followed it here. No escape now, just the math of ammunition versus targets. Vasquez had maybe 60 rounds. The approaching force had hundreds. But 60 rounds could buy time, could buy Chen a few more breaths, a few more heartbeats. And maybe, just maybe, someone friendly was listening to the noise she was about to make. She sighted on the lead truck, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder and the lead truck's windshield exploded in a spray of glass. The driver slumped, the vehicle swerving hard right before crashing into a boulder. The second truck stopped, men pouring out, returning fire. Rounds snapped past Vasquez's position, striking rock with angry whines. She shifted position, fired again, dropped one of the soldiers. The helicopter circled, trying to get an angle. She ignored it, couldn't fight everything at once. Focus on what you could kill. She dropped another soldier, then another. Her magazine ran dry. She swapped it with mechanical efficiency, muscle memory from thousands of repetitions on the range. New magazine seated, charging handle racked, back on target. Fire, fire, fire. 3-round bursts, conserving ammunition, making each shot count. The enemy scattered, seeking cover. Good. Scared enemies made mistakes. She shifted position again, not giving them a stationary target. The helicopter made its move, swinging wide to flank her. She tracked it, leading the target, and fired. The round sparked off the fuselage, armored. She adjusted, aimed for the tail rotor, and squeezed off half a magazine. Something critical broke. The helicopter shuddered, nose down, and fought for altitude. It didn't explode, didn't crash, but it withdrew, trailing smoke. Small victory. She'd bought more time. But time for what? She was down to 2 magazines now, maybe 30 rounds total. The enemy had regrouped, was advancing more carefully. Professional soldiers, not conscripts. They'd learned to respect her. That respect would get her killed. They'd pin her down, flank her, overwhelm her position. Standard tactics, and she had no counter. Chen stirred, consciousness returning briefly. What's happening? Contact, Vasquez said calmly, as if discussing the weather. Nothing we can't handle. She fired twice more, keeping the enemy honest. 28 rounds left. How you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, Chen said. Then, hearing the gunfire, we're fighting. We're negotiating, Vasquez corrected, aggressively. She dropped another soldier who'd gotten too confident, 25 rounds. But yeah, we're fighting. Chen tried to sit up, couldn't manage it. Give me a weapon, I can still shoot. You can barely breathe, Vasquez said. Rest, let me handle this part. That's not how Marines work, Chen said. We fight together. Vasquez wanted to argue, but movement caught her eye, 3 soldiers attempting to flank from the north. She shifted, fired, and one went down. The other 2 dove for cover, 22 rounds remaining. Fine, she said. When they breach this position, I'll hand you my sidearm. Until then, you're on morale support. Keep me entertained. With what? Chen asked. Jokes. Why not? Vasquez reloaded again, down to her last magazine. 15 rounds between them and death. I like jokes. Chen's laugh was painful but genuine. Okay, what's the difference between an A-10 pilot and a fighter pilot? Tell me, Vasquez said, sighting on the enemy's position. The A-10 pilot has actually seen the ground. Vasquez snorted. That's terrible, try again. What does an A-10 pilot say when they crash? What? Finally, I'm going fast enough. Despite everything, the gunfire, the dying, the absolute certainty of their situation, Vasquez laughed, really laughed. The sound was strange in that context, absurd and human and defiant. You're wasted as a Marine, she said. Should have been a comedian. I'll add it to my resume, Chen said. Right after survived impossible desert extraction. We haven't survived yet, Vasquez pointed out. But she was smiling, and somehow that made it all bearable. The enemy regrouped for a final push. Vasquez could see them coordinating, preparing to overwhelm her position through sheer numbers. 15 rounds wouldn't stop what was coming, but 15 rounds could make them remember this fight, could make them understand that cheap victories didn't exist, that every target had teeth. She checked her sidearm. 1 full magazine, 15 rounds there too. 30 rounds total. Not enough, but what was enough was just another word for theoretical. Soldiers began their advance, disciplined and determined. Vasquez waited, let them commit, then opened fire, steady, controlled bursts, each round carefully placed. 1 soldier down, 2, 3. They returned fire, a wall of lead that chewed through her cover. She felt something hot slash across her shoulder, not a direct hit but close enough to draw blood. She ignored it, kept firing. 4 down, 5. Her rifle locked open, empty. She transitioned to her sidearm without pause, kept shooting. 6 down. 7. Then something changed. A new sound, high and distant but growing rapidly louder. Vasquez knew that sound, knew it better than her own heartbeat. The whine of turbofan engines. American turbofans. She looked up, squinting into the hard blue sky, and there they were, a pair of F-16s dropping from altitude, already configuring for a gun run. The lead F-16 rolled in, the massive Gatling gun in its nose spinning up. The sound when it fired was biblical, a roar that physically struck the chest, that made the earth shake. 20-millimeter rounds chewed through the enemy position like it was made of paper, sending up geysers of sand and stone. The soldiers scattered, abandoned their assault, tried to run. The second F-16 followed, adding its own voice to the violence. Vasquez keyed her radio, found the emergency frequency suddenly clear. Reaper 2-6 to any fast mover overhead. Thanks for the rescue. Got 1 critical casualty here, need immediate dust-off. A voice came back, professional and calm. Reaper 2-6, this is Viper lead. Good to hear you're alive. They told us you went down hard. Medevac is inbound, ETA 10 minutes. Stay put and stay pretty. Copy Viper lead, Vasquez said. She looked at Chen, saw his eyes were open, watching the show. You hear that? We're going home. Chen's smile was weak but radiant. Never doubted it, not for a second. Liar, Vasquez said, but she was smiling too. The medevac helicopter arrived exactly 10 minutes later, a HH-60 Pave Hawk bristling with weapons and determination. It set down in a storm of rotor wash, and within seconds, pararescue men were hauling Chen aboard, starting IVs, administering medication. They tried to help Vasquez too, but she waved them off. I'm ambulatory. Take care of him first. One of the PJs, a staff sergeant with kind eyes, looked at her shoulder. That's bleeding pretty good, ma'am. You should let us. I said I'm ambulatory, Vasquez repeated. I'll wait my turn. The PJ nodded, understanding the hierarchy of need. He turned back to Chen, and Vasquez climbed into the helicopter under her own power. She strapped in, watched the desert fall away as they gained altitude, and felt something release in her chest. They'd made it. Against mathematics and probability and common sense, they'd actually made it. The flight to the forward operating base took 40 minutes. Vasquez spent it watching Chen get worked on by the medical team, seeing color slowly return to his face as fluids and antibiotics did their work. He'd need surgery, probably lose part of that leg, but he'd live. He'd see his son again. He'd get to rewrite that last letter. When they touched down, Chen was rushed to the surgical unit. Vasquez finally let herself be examined. The wound on her shoulder was superficial, painful, but not serious. They cleaned it, bandaged it, gave her antibiotics and something for the pain. She refused the pain medication, wanted to stay sharp. Captain Vasquez. She turned. A colonel stood there, clean uniform, command presence. Sir, she said, coming to attention. At ease, the colonel said. He studied her with eyes that had seen too much and judged carefully. Hell of a thing you did out there. Crashing a perfectly good jet to pick up a stranded Marine. Command's still trying to decide if you're brave or insane. Little of both, sir, Vasquez said. The colonel almost smiled. Your after-action report's going to be interesting reading, but first, how's Chen? Alive, Vasquez said. He's alive because you sent those F-16s when you did. We sent them because you made enough noise to wake the dead, the colonel said. That radio call, then the firefight, it lit up every sensor we had. We triangulated your position and scrambled everything within range. He paused. You cost the taxpayers a very expensive aircraft, Captain, but you saved a Marine's life and showed every pilot in this theater what our values actually look like. So yeah, you're probably getting a medal, and definitely getting a psych eval. Can't have pilots thinking they can make unauthorized crash landings every time they feel heroic. Understood, sir, Vasquez said. Then, permission to speak freely. Granted. I'd do it again, Vasquez said. Without hesitation. That's worth whatever consequences come my way. The colonel nodded slowly. I believe you would. That's what has Command nervous, but it's also what makes you valuable. He turned to leave, then stopped. Chen's awake. He's been asking for you. Medical says he's stable enough for visitors. 5 minutes. Vasquez didn't wait for further permission. She found the surgical ward, navigated past nurses and doctors, and located Chen's bed. He looked small under the white sheets, face still gray but eyes clear. An IV dripped clear fluid into his arm, and monitors beeped a steady rhythm. Hey, she said. Hey, Chen replied. They tell me I'm going to live. Apparently, I have you to thank for that. You would have done the same, Vasquez said. Maybe, Chen allowed, but I didn't have to, you did. He was quiet for a moment. They're flying me stateside tomorrow. Walter Reed, then recovery. I'll be home in 3 weeks. Going to surprise Marcus. Show up at his school, be there when he gets out of class. He's going to lose his mind, Vasquez said. In the good way. I hope so, Chen said. I really hope so. He reached out, took her hand. I don't know how to thank you, don't have words big enough. Then don't, Vasquez said. Just be there for your son, teach him about dinosaurs and baseball. Be the dad you wanted to be. That's thanks enough. Chen nodded, and Vasquez saw tears tracking down his face. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Time to leave, let him rest. But as she turned to go, he spoke again. Reaper, he said, you earned that call sign for the wrong reasons, but you've redeemed it. From now on, when people ask about Reaper 26, they're going to hear a different story. About a pilot who chose life over protocol. Who crashed an A-10 in enemy territory to save a stranger. That's your legacy now. That's what Reaper means. Vasquez felt something tighten in her throat. Get some rest, Marine. That's an order. Yes, ma'am, Chen said, smiling. Yes, ma'am. The debriefing lasted 3 days. Vasquez sat across from intelligence officers, operational commanders, and flight safety investigators, answering the same questions in slightly different forms. Why did you land instead of eject? What was your threat assessment? Did you consider the